Too many wander through life measuring themselves against the successes or failures of others, unaware that the true path to achievement lies not in imitation, but in mastery of oneself. Every great accomplishment begins with a single, unwavering focus, the commitment to improve your own mind, sharpen your own skills, and cultivate your own character. When you stop looking outward for validation and instead turn your attention inward, you discover a wellspring of power, creativity, and opportunity that has always been yours. Today, we begin a journey, not to compete with others, but to surpass the limitations you've placed upon yourself, to awaken the potential that waits quietly within, and to embrace the extraordinary life that only focus and self-discipline can reveal. There is a quiet, almost invisible force that shapes the destiny of every individual who achieves greatness. It is neither luck nor mere circumstance, nor the favor of powerful friends or family. It is something far simpler, yet far more profound. It is the relentless focus on oneself. The person who understands this principle learns to direct energy, thought, and effort toward personal growth, not toward the fleeting approval or criticism of others. Every successful life begins with this simple, yet often overlooked truth. Your attention, your focus, and your determination must be turned inward, for it is within yourself that the seeds of achievement are sown. Consider for a moment how often people expend their strength measuring themselves against others. They compare their earnings to those of their neighbors, their talents to those of colleagues, their popularity to that of acquaintances. In this endless comparison, the mind becomes fragmented, distracted, and weakened. And in this weakened state, the individual drifts aimlessly, unable to harness the true potential that lies dormant within. But when a person decides to focus on themselves, to understand their own strengths, to acknowledge their own weaknesses, and to cultivate their own skills, their entire life begins to change. The mind becomes a powerful engine, capable of solving problems, generating ideas, and creating opportunities that no one else could foresee. It is this inward attention that separates those who merely dream from those who act, and those who act from those who succeed. But focus on oneself is not selfishness, nor is it arrogance. It is the conscious decision to direct your life with intention, to recognize that your thoughts and actions are the architects of your destiny. Every habit you form, every skill you refine, every decision you make is magnified when your energy is concentrated on your own development. The distractions of the world, the envy of peers, the opinions of strangers, all of these fade when the mind is fully engaged in self-mastery. Imagine the power of a mind fully dedicated to improvement. Every morning, the individual who understands this principle awakens not to the noise of comparison, but to the clarity of purpose. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to grow. Each failure is examined not as a reflection of inadequacy, but as a lesson to refine character, sharpen skills, and strengthen resolve. This focus transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary achievement. There is a rhythm to life that the self-focused individual understands instinctively. They recognize that the external world will never dictate their inner state, that success is born from the disciplined cultivation of thought and action, and that no circumstance can derail a mind committed to progress. When you center your energy on your own growth, you cultivate a magnetic force that draws opportunity toward you. You begin to notice solutions where others see obstacles, ideas where others see emptiness, and potential where others see limits. It is the mind, disciplined and focused, that becomes the instrument through which dreams manifest into reality. Many people fail to grasp this power because they are preoccupied with the success of others, constantly seeking validation or approval. They imitate, they envy, they worry about what others think, and in doing so, they dilute the most potent resource they possess, their own mind. The individual who understands the power of self-focus refuses to be distracted. They rise above comparison, above criticism, and above the trivial judgments of society. They ask only one question: how can I improve? How can I become more capable, more resilient, more effective? And in asking these questions, they tap into a reservoir of strength that no one else can touch. It is not an easy path, for the mind is naturally drawn outward, toward the accomplishments and lives of others. The world is full of distractions, and every day presents countless temptations to look outward instead of inward. Yet the person who masters the art of self-focus learns to harness these distractions, to transform them into fuel rather than barriers. They learn that true power does not lie in imitation, but in the disciplined refinement of their own talents and character. And the rewards are profound. As they grow in skill, clarity, and confidence, they begin to attract circumstances that align with their ambitions. Doors open not by chance, but because their preparation, their mindset, and their persistent effort create a natural alignment with opportunity. To focus on oneself is to recognize that the journey to success is not a race against others, but a commitment to become the highest version of oneself. Every great thinker, inventor, entrepreneur, and leader understood this truth instinctively. They did not waste energy comparing themselves to others. They invested every ounce of their being in understanding their unique abilities, cultivating their strengths, and confronting their limitations. And in doing so, they created results that seemed impossible to those who were distracted by the achievements of others. The power of self-focus is the foundation upon which all achievement is built. It is the compass that guides decisions, the engine that drives action, and the lens through which life is viewed with clarity and purpose. When a person embraces this principle, they step into a realm where their potential is no longer constrained by the external world. Instead, it is unleashed, nurtured, and directed toward the creation of a life defined not by comparison, but by mastery, accomplishment, and fulfillment. It is one of the greatest traps the mind can fall into to measure one's value against the accomplishments of others. From the earliest moments of life, we are conditioned to look outward for approval, to seek recognition by how well we match or surpass those around us. And yet, in this constant comparison, we lose sight of what is truly ours, our own abilities, our own potential, and the unique path that has been laid before us. When a person spends their energy focused on what someone else has achieved, they inadvertently dilute the strength of their own mind. Attention is the most powerful resource we possess, and every moment spent observing the successes or failures of others is a moment not invested in cultivating our own skills, sharpening our own talents, and refining our own character. Imagine a person who watches others rise in their career, gain recognition, or accumulate wealth. It is natural for envy or doubt to creep in, but these emotions serve no purpose other than to distract. They pull the mind outward, like a wandering compass needle, away from the inner work that is necessary for genuine achievement. The individual who succumbs to comparison becomes paralyzed by the illusion that others' accomplishments define their own possibilities. They fail to see that each person has a unique set of circumstances, strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities, and that trying to replicate someone else's path is not only futile, but destructive. By constantly comparing ourselves to others, we surrender control over our own lives. We give power to forces we cannot control, society's judgments, peers' successes, or strangers' opinions. We begin to shape our decisions based on what seems to be the standard, rather than what is aligned with our own purpose. But the truth is simple and liberating. The only person we can truly surpass is ourselves. The individual who realizes this truth turns their gaze inward. They recognize that their growth is not measured by the height of others, but by the progress they make in mastering their own mind, refining their own skills, and expanding their own capacity for achievement. In this way, comparison becomes irrelevant because the focus is no longer on someone else's life, but on one's own advancement. Consider how much energy is wasted in jealousy, in envy, in frustration at the success of others. This energy, if redirected towards self-improvement, becomes a powerful engine for progress. Each hour spent worrying about someone else's fortune is an hour not spent learning, practicing, or creating. Each thought of inadequacy, born from comparison, is a seed that weakens ambition and clouds judgment. Yet the person who understands the futility of comparison frees themselves from these chains. They see that true power lies not in emulating others, but in cultivating what is uniquely their own. They embrace their strengths without arrogance and confront their weaknesses without fear, understanding that each individual's journey is incomparable. It is important to recognize that comparison is not merely an abstract mental habit. It manifests in tangible ways: hesitation to act, fear of failure, procrastination, and distraction. When one is preoccupied with how they measure up to others, they lose clarity of purpose. They delay decisions, fearing that they will not measure up or that their efforts are insignificant in the grand scheme. And in doing so, they surrender precious time and opportunities that will never return. The individual who transcends comparison develops an inner compass, guided not by the world's standards, but by their own values and ambitions. Every step is purposeful, every effort intentional, and every setback becomes a lesson rather than a condemnation. By focusing on their own progress, they unlock a level of creativity, innovation, and resilience that would remain dormant if their attention were constantly drawn outward. Comparison also blinds us to the richness of our own experiences. Each person's path is filled with lessons that cannot be replicated, moments of insight that are unique, and opportunities that are particular to their circumstances. By fixating on someone else's life, we risk overlooking the guidance and inspiration present in our own. There is a freedom in understanding that we are not competing with others. The race is internal, and the finish line is not someone else's accomplishment, but the realization of our own potential. Once this truth is embraced, the mind becomes a disciplined, directed instrument, capable of sustained effort toward meaningful objectives. One begins to see that the accomplishments of others are not threats, but illustrations of what is possible when focus, discipline, and perseverance are applied. They become sources of inspiration rather than triggers of self-doubt. And in this mindset, the true power of human potential is unlocked, because energy is no longer scattered, but concentrated on what truly matters: the growth, mastery, and achievement of oneself. Comparison, in essence, is the enemy of progress. It is a thief that steals focus, an illusion that distorts perception, and a barrier that blocks the path to greatness. But when it is recognized for what it is, and deliberately cast aside, the mind becomes free to pursue the highest objectives, to cultivate the greatest talents, and to create outcomes that are uniquely and undeniably one's own. In focusing on yourself, you discover a life unshackled from envy, distraction, and wasted effort, and you step into the realm of achievement that is defined not by others, but by the limitless potential within. There is a principle as old as time and as certain as the rising sun that governs the lives of every successful individual. Mastery over the mind is the foundation upon which all achievement rests. The mind is the instrument through which every thought, every decision, and every action flows. And yet most people leave it untamed, wandering aimlessly in response to circumstance, impulse, or the influence of others. The person who seeks greatness understands that the first and most important conquest is not of the external world, but of the self, the thoughts they allow to dominate their consciousness, the habits they cultivate, and the decisions they make in every moment. To master the mind is to understand that your thoughts shape your reality. Every idea you entertain, every belief you hold, and every attitude you nurture contributes to the world you create around you. It is not circumstance, nor fortune, nor the opinions of others that determine your results. It is the clarity, discipline, and direction of your own mental focus. The mind, when directed and controlled, becomes a powerful engine of creation. It can transform obstacles into opportunities, setbacks into lessons, and challenges into triumphs. But left unchecked, it becomes a prison, a source of doubt, fear, and hesitation that robs the individual of their potential and clouds the path to success. Mastery of the mind is inseparable from mastery of action. Thought without action is like a seed planted in barren soil. It contains potential, yet produces nothing. The individual who achieves extraordinary results understands that every thought must ultimately manifest in purposeful effort. They cultivate habits of discipline, follow through on their intentions, and develop the resilience to persist when the world resists them. To act without direction is as dangerous as to think without purpose. Only when thought and action are aligned does true power emerge. Consider the common patterns of failure. Many are intelligent, talented, and capable, yet they drift through life because they allow their minds to be distracted by fear, uncertainty, or the trivial opinions of others. They entertain doubt, postpone decisions, and hesitate when action is required. Their lack of mental mastery becomes a barrier, preventing potential from transforming into achievement. The person who masters their mind, however, approaches every situation with deliberate intent. They understand that control over thought is control over destiny. They are vigilant over the influences they allow into their consciousness, mindful of the information they consume, and selective about the habits they nurture. Their mind is not a passive observer, but an active instrument of creation. Action in this context is not mere busyness. It is not random motion or reaction to circumstance. It is the purposeful execution of a plan guided by disciplined thought. The individual who masters both thought and action does not wait for opportunity to knock. They create it. They do not rely on luck. They manufacture conditions favorable to their success. Every decision, every movement, and every choice is calibrated to move them closer to their objectives, guided by the compass of a focused, disciplined mind. Mastery over the self also entails the courage to confront one's weaknesses. The mind, untamed, tends to resist discomfort, evade responsibility, and rationalize failure. But the individual committed to self-mastery examines their limitations with honesty, acknowledges their mistakes, and takes full responsibility for growth. In doing so, they transform obstacles into stepping stones, setbacks into lessons, and limitations into areas for innovation and improvement. This mastery of mind and action is not achieved in a single moment, nor through sporadic effort. It is the product of consistent, deliberate practice over time. Each day presents a series of choices, and each choice is an opportunity to strengthen discipline, sharpen focus, and direct energy toward purposeful objectives. The mind becomes a muscle, trained to resist distractions, overcome fear, and maintain clarity even under pressure. The power of self-mastery extends beyond personal achievement. A mind under control influences others positively, sets a standard of excellence, and becomes a beacon for those seeking inspiration. By mastering oneself, an individual becomes capable of leadership, innovation, and the creation of impact that reverberates far beyond personal boundaries. It is important to recognize that mastery is not about perfection. No one controls every thought or acts flawlessly at every moment. Rather, it is the persistent effort to direct thought and action toward deliberate purpose, to correct course when deviation occurs, and to continually refine habits, focus, and responses to circumstance. The individual who commits to this path discovers a remarkable truth. The more control they have over their mind and actions, the more effective they become in every sphere of life. Obstacles lose their power to intimidate. Challenges become opportunities to demonstrate skill, and the chaos of external circumstance is transformed into a canvas for intentional creation. Mastery over mind and action is the ultimate form of empowerment. It frees the individual from the sway of emotion, opinion, and circumstance. It allows them to act with confidence, think with clarity, and pursue objectives with unwavering determination. It is the cornerstone of achievement, the catalyst for progress, and the force that separates those who dream from those who realize their dreams. Every great accomplishment, every innovation, and every breakthrough begins in the mind of a person who has taken control of their own thoughts and actions. To neglect this principle is to surrender power to chance, habit, and the influence of others. To embrace it is to step into a life of purpose, direction, and extraordinary potential, where the individual is the master of their destiny, the architect of their achievements, and the author of their own remarkable story. There comes a moment in every life when a person must recognize a simple yet profound truth. No one else is responsible for your growth, your success, or your happiness. The world is full of advice, opinions, and examples, yet none of these can substitute for the deliberate, persistent effort that each individual must invest in themselves. To achieve greatness, one must take full responsibility for their own progress, acknowledging that the power to shape destiny lies within and nowhere else. Many drift through life seeking guidance, blaming circumstances, or waiting for external validation. They point to lack of opportunity, difficult conditions, or the interference of others as reasons for their limited results. Yet the truth is that these factors, while real, are secondary to the force that ultimately determines success, the degree to which one assumes ownership over their own mind, actions, and growth. Every achievement, every advancement begins with a recognition that you are the architect of your own life. It is a principle that requires courage, because to take full responsibility is to acknowledge that excuses, blame, and reliance on others serve only to diminish your power. It is to accept that the conditions of your life, your successes, failures, and the obstacles you face are largely the product of your choices, your habits, and your willingness to act with intention. Responsibility for personal growth is not a passive state. It is an active, daily commitment to invest time, energy, and focus into developing skills, expanding knowledge, and strengthening character. It is the understanding that no matter how favorable or unfavorable external circumstances may be, progress is determined by what you do